I have had the privilege of talking with you so many times, and you gave a great talk, covered so much. But I wanted to start with something that I have always loved talking to you about, and it hits people that are out there watching, those people that are here as well, and that is, if they're entrepreneurs, they're in business, they're leading, there's a certain amount of fear or anxiety that you're gonna face. There's no way to escape it. Right. You've taught me a lot about the lizard brain. It's a real part in the back of our brain, and I want you to set that up, and then how we begin to, okay, now that we realize how this actually works and affects us, how do we begin to lead through all of that?
Well, you know, if we look at wolves or chimps or chipmunks, they are wild animals. What makes them a wild animal? What makes them a wild animal is there's a little tiny part of their brain that's responsible for safety, anger, reproduction. That rules the day. It's this big, size of 2 almonds. It's called their amygdala. Well, we have it too, but over the years we grew the other part of our brain in front of it. So when you're sitting there doing the fractions, this part of your brain is at work. Until Miss Binder takes out a ruler and says, you better get it right or I'll wrap your knuckles, and then this part of our brain takes over. We sometimes call that fight or flight, the amygdala. Well, it was really useful if there's saber-toothed tigers around. It's really useful if you have to outrun a jaguar. In our modern world, it's completely unuseful. If you freak out before you go through security and get on an airplane, you are signaling to the person who's inspecting you that you might be hiding something. So now you get in more trouble because that part of your brain took over. So we have a problem as artists, as instigators, as entrepreneurs. And the problem is not only we are afraid, we're afraid of fear. Because when we are afraid, it puts all these chemicals in our brain that we don't like. So we become afraid of that. So we have this second order fear. What does that cause us to do? Play it safe, read books that have bullet points in them, follow the leader, fit in, fit in, fit in. One of the ways of fitting in the last few years is go raise some money. That helps you fit in Silicon Valley. Go raise some money, because now you're a real entrepreneur. Well, now you just brought yourself a world of pain, because now you have a partner who just wants that money back, making it even worse. So I can't tell you how to make the fear go away, because you can't. But what you can do is dance with it. Like the rain and singing in the rain, you can say, oh, welcome. I must be on to something. Mm-hmm. When you feel that feeling, you say, oh, I'm about to do something important. It's a good thing I'm feeling that feeling. And if you can befriend the resistance, as Steve Pressfield calls it, it becomes a compass. It tells you what thing to do next. If it feels safe, it's probably not the thing for you to do.
Yeah. I want to follow up on that because it feels like in American culture, certainly with the way that parents over the last several decades have felt like, okay, I've got to send my kid to school, and so we've created to college after high school. Yeah. So what's happened is we've created this whole cultural movement where what happens is we go for the safe decision. We think the safe decision is smarter. So when you said that, it made me think of that. Right. I want to crusade against that because I just want you to weigh in on this, and if it's the wrong question, you can take it because we're friends. But the idea here is safe is not always smart. In fact, many times it's not so smart at all. Isn't that what you're saying?
During revolutionary times, it's never smart. The revolution destroys the perfect and enables the impossible. The safe thing to do is own a little bookstore, not start Amazon in 1994.
Exactly.
That was foolish, but it was a revolution, so he did the safest thing, which was different.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about sending your kid to college, it's $250,000. It's 4 years. It trains you to do certain things. If you want to do those things and you're sure, you should go. Should you go to a famous college or an effective college? Well, a famous college makes you feel more safe because they have a famous football team or a famous whatever. But it's not the feeling that you're going for. The feeling you're going for is this going to matter to me? Is it going to open doors for me? What would happen if I could finish college in 2 years and only spend $100,000. What would I do with that $100,000? Because we're living in a revolution right now. If you're a radiologist, you went to school for more than 8 years to read x-rays. Well, 5 years ago, the revolution kicked in and said, you know what? We can send a digital x-ray to Sri Lanka or India, and someone can read it faster than you, cheaper than you. Not good. But even worse, now we can send it to a computer. And the computer can read it way better than you for free.
That's right.
So if you're a radiologist, you're toast. And if you have a job that's like being a radiologist, which means simple pattern matching, task orientation, not dealing with fear, not dancing with the impossible, you're doomed.
That's right.
So it may feel safe to go to the placement office to get a job at the local whatever. It's not safe. It just feels safe. That in a revolutionary moment, you have to do something that feels risky.
Yeah. You talked about following the leader in your talk today, and it was really, really great. And I want to bring it down into the folks that are standing here, those that are watching from all around the country. Whatever business they're in, they're not in a unique business. They're in a very similar business. Maybe their competitors are local, maybe they're regional, whatever. So how do they make sure that they're not following the leader in the terms of, okay, this is how everybody does in our industry, and we're just trying to grab as many marbles as we can?
The easiest way to be a commodity is to decide that you're a commodity. And this is all from Tom Peters 20 years ago. Name me a business, and I can tell you a way to make that business not a commodity. You're only a commodity if you want to be. Mm-hmm. So Tom talks about a company, I can't remember the name, that made pipes and flexible connectors for heavy-duty air conditioners and things like that. Well, there's 100 companies who did that.
Right.
So how do you win? Well, they decided to win by, instead of taking 3 weeks to deliver stuff, organizing from the top down to deliver stuff in 12 hours.
Wow.
Now, if you want it regular, don't buy from them. They're too expensive. If you want it fast, no one can keep up because they're the only ones who are organized for fast. So they decided not to be a commodity. And you can do that with any business if you decide to pay the price to not be a commodity.
Wow, that's good. And it's really about, okay, how can we be very, very unique and provide more value? What are the couple of questions you need to be asking
Not
there?
for value for everyone. So this pipe company,
right.
90% of the market doesn't need them.
Right.
In the case of my blog, 97% of the people in the United States have never read a word I wrote.
Wow.
I'm a failure. I've only reached 3% of the people in the United States at the most, right?
Yeah.
That's enough.
Unbelievable. All right, now Dave said this earlier to me, that Linchpin is your favorite book. Is that true?
Well,
it's like choosing from your
who's
children.
your favorite kid, right?
Yeah.
So Survival is Not Enough is my favorite because I took the longest to write and it sold the least copies by far. By far, it sold almost no copies. So of course, someone has to like it. It's me.
I love it.
But this book changed my life. I learned more writing this book than anyone has read reading it. And before this book, I was very comfortable with the stuff I was writing about. This took me way outside my comfort zone and changed who I am as a person.
Yeah. The subtitle is, Are You Indispensable? And if there's not a universal question that'll rock your world, this is unbelievable.
A lot of people hate this.
Right.
A lot of institutions hate this. I have been denounced by institutions, organizations, religious institutions, because they've said the industrial economy has brainwashed us into all being like those guys in the 1984 ad. Walk in a straight robe, be replaceable, because that makes the system work. How dare someone have the hubris to say, I am indispensable? Well, of course, no one's actually indispensable. If you disappeared, the earth would keep rotating.
Right.
But in the short run,
that's right.
Some people are more indispensable than others, and it's a choice. And I think when you make the choice, your life gets better, and the people around you, their lives get better.
I've got to ask you this question. We only got about a minute here, but going back to a conversation we were having just moments ago, what do you see out there as it relates to college? I feel like I'm seeing a trend where more and more parents are starting to realize, wait a second, my kid can actually really be successful without the expensive 4-year degree. And now all of a sudden it's not so much keep up with the Joneses. Do you think that's eventually going to play out to where it's not the stigma if you say, where's Johnny going? And somebody says that to you to party and you go,
my son,
you know what, Johnny's going to be a welder and he's going to start out making $48,000 a year.
Yeah, so here are a couple things. First of all, college is extraordinary if you go for the right reason, which does not include football or social clubs. It involves learning deeply in a way that makes you extremely insecure on the way to understanding something better than almost anyone on earth. Right. If you're willing to do that, I'm all for it. But for many people, it's like high school, but with more binge drinking.
That's right.
So I'm not in favor of that at all. That's a waste of time and money.
Yeah.
I don't think Johnny is noteworthy because he's a welder, and particularly not because he's making $48,000 a year. I would say Johnny is productive, engaged, and on the road to being who he wants to become.
Yes.
And if you can do those 3 things without spending 4 years doing more high school, by all means, you should do that. But at some point, you're going to have to do deep emotional labor. And it's the emotional labor of confronting something you're not an expert at, of getting a job without going to the placement office, of looking other people in the eye and understanding who they are, of solving interesting problems, and of leading. And unfortunately, we don't teach that very much in high school or college.
That's right.
You better learn it sooner or later. So I'm a huge fan of a gap year. Get a $300 ticket to India and figure out how to make enough money to fly home, right? Figure out how to run a part of Habitat for Humanity. Figure out how to start something. If you want to go to college and do that at the same time, I'm all for it. That's what made me.
Yeah.
But you can't just go and say, will this be on the test? Will this be on the test is one of the most dangerous sentences in the English language.
Boy, that is so true. He is Seth Godin. Give him some love. Don't you appreciate Seth? Great stuff.
Go make a ruckus.